It is my privilege and joy that we can continue our study about making friends for God with this last presentation, which has the subtitle, A Step in Faith. Every one of us, I hope, knows now that the only way that a spirit can accumulate information is through faith. And there can be only two ways of faith. You either believe the truth or you believe the lie. And God has sent His Son into this world to bring the truth, the light to us, because we are all born in deception. And He wants to save everyone. And the only way of salvation is by the knowing of the truth. The truth is the only means by which we can become free and saved. It's the same thing, freedom and salvation. And Jesus is the one, as we will see later also, that came and bear witness unto the truth. And everyone that is of the truth will hear His voice. And He gave us His Holy Spirit that He should teach us, our spirit, into the whole truth. Now, there are only two roots of all things, the truth and the lie. And there are only two kinds of people. People who believe the truth and people who believe the lie. And we have reached the time in which God will separate them. There will be a marked, a visible separation from those who believe the lie, from those who believe the truth. This has started with the crisis that started at the beginning of this year. So there will be a few people who believe the truth and many who believe the lie, as it always was in history and as it also is today. The minority, will be free agents. The others will be in fear of things to come they don't know. And in a false hope that things will come back to normal. Well, it shows a lot of ignorance of the law of God, and it shows a lot of ignorance of the prophecies that our church reveals today. It's amazing. We are called Adventists because God called us to proclaim His coming. But now we don't proclaim His coming. We do the opposite. And we believe a lie, as we will show later. Since the lie is having all kinds of forms, it is multiple. The truth is one and simple. The truth is absolute and stands for itself because it is the basic law. It is that way to see things that is unchangeable. And it's very simple. Nothing can exist and function by itself. God summed them all up in the first 4 commandments of the 10. And nothing can do anything for itself. And God summed that up in the 6 last commandments of the 10 on the other part of the stone. That's why He wrote them on 2 tables of stone. This is unchangeable, has no contradictions, is comprehensive, omnipresent, accessible to everyone, and simple. There will be no excuse for no person ever that he neglected to study this simplicity, not to study it, to acknowledge it, that it is so. Everything in this universe, all elements of the macro and the microcosmos have one single way of functioning. That's they are a channel. Everyone has an entrance and an exit. Everyone must take in order to give. Everything has a cause and an effect. And since the sum of all channels is a channel, the beginning of the channel is God, and the end of the sum of the channel is God. And so everything works and functions in a circuit, and no one can change that. So what is the main difference between the truth and the lie? A channel was made for a purpose. When Jesus called His disciples, He did not call them for their own sake, for their salvation. But he said, I will make you fishers of men. Follow me. They had to leave their job, which was in the service, not of God. Doesn't matter which job you do. If you do it for yourself, you're in the service of the devil. Because you must serve someone in everything you do. Now, you can be a fishers for God. So it doesn't matter the job. You can be even a tax collector for God. But Jesus, when he called his disciples, he called them for a job to do. Because the purpose is not in being, in existence, or in the means that we need for existence. The purpose is only in one thing, and that is in what we do. So that's the law. That's why Jesus never calls anyone for his own sake. He did not call Paul and came down from heaven just because he liked Paul. Well, he liked Paul, but he didn't call Paul for Paul's sake, but for the sake of being him a servant to fulfill a job, as we have seen at the beginning of this series. Now, what is the main difference between truth and lie? Can a channel become a source? That's the separation edge. That's the thing that we can discern between truth and error. The truth, the law says no. And the error, the lie says yes. And since this is basic of the basic, and we have not understood the law, that's why now in these days, our church and all the churches reveal basically, except a few. I thank God for those few churches that stand up today for the truth. And they do not comply with what someone as a human tells them, no matter which it's a government or a scientist. They say we have to do the will of God, not the will of man. Today, the churches reveal that they believe a lie. They believe that the virus can attack you, that the virus is not a channel, but a source. They believe science, and I call today science, this is the altar of the devil. Now, you see, I was always wondering, since I am a child, I said, how will the world ever believe in idols? How will they be worshiper of false gods? I said, there is no one that does that today. We have no images, at least in our church. Well, we have not known the deceptiveness of Lucifer, of the arch-deceiver. He found out that with science as his religion, he will gather all the people around his God, which is the virus. Invisible, not trackable. You must believe in him, and he can kill you. And the only antidote for the virus is the vaccine. Friends, we believe in something that is a pure lie. But we say, no, it's the truth. I spoke last night with my nephew because of his birthday, and he said to me, I cannot believe that 99% of all the doctors might be wrong. Well, I asked him if he believes that the devil still exists. But he says, I cannot believe the devil has come over science. Well, whose science is it today? It's the devil's science. But it's not only the scientists that are wrong. Let's read from John 8. Jesus is in the temple. And he says, I am the light of the world. He comes to bring the light and the truth. And there are some who believe in him. It says in verse 30, and as he spake these words, many believed on him. Then said Jesus to the Jews which believed on him, if ye continue in my word, then are ye my disciples indeed. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. What was their reaction? The truth shall make us free? We are not in bondage. And then he tells them very clearly in verse 44, ye are of your father, the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. What is the lust of the devil? It's killing. It's taking away your liberty. That's the lust of the devil. And what he does is phenomenal today. You know, our church, and I say this in all the fear of God, is first in helping the state to implement the devilish laws of keeping distance and wearing masks. It's our help institution, ADRA, who in Chile has united with the state to enforce to the people on the street that they should keep distance and wear a mask. This is the lust of the devil. A sister with her family, with three children, went to a church in Berlin last Sabbath, and the pastor did not allow them to get in. He kicked them out because they were a danger for the church. Because they have 3 doctors in that church that all say how dangerous the virus is. Now you see, friends, if you would bring a snake in the church, then I would say, yes, that's dangerous. If you bring a rattlesnake, some poisonous snake, you would never play with that, because that's evident that is so. But the virus is just a belief. The virus is just something that the devil invented and made it that everyone should believe on him. But this is also the weak point of whole science, because you must believe on him. So people will raise up one day, I mean not the Christians, the other ones, and will say, is that what we believe really the truth? So we cannot believe a lie. But we show through our lust that we like to kill. And the pastors are in front of that. And the church elders do not allow people to come into the church because they are sick. Would you let a COVID-19 person enter your community? And would you be afraid he will spread a virus all over? Have you any evidence on the existence and of its function? Have you ever checked it? Or are you really a believer in humans? The law says that nothing of that what science says about the virus can be true. Nothing. Nothing. What did they do with Jesus? Jesus continued and says, he was a murderer from the beginning. And this is what he do. We will be killed because we shake hands. We will be persecuted because we visited the sick. And abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. So what or who will you believe? That's the only question. There's nothing more than this, friends. Who will you believe? You either must believe the scientists, humans, or you must believe God, who is with the law. I said, my nephew, will you ever believe to humans where he says, I'm not an expert? I says, you don't need to be an expert. You just need to know the fundamental law of all things and check it. If that what is said can be true. There's nothing more simple. That's amazing. We are not able because we are ignorant of the most basic things of nature. Why are we ignorant of that? I was born like every one of you. We were born in a deception. The lie is in us. That's why it's so hard. And I am born, this is my father's picture, and this is my mother, and they come from Adam, and Adam was made out of dust, which is the body, and he was also made of a breath of life, which became a spirit, and both together make the soul. And in our spirit, in our heart, we are all born with the lie in us that we are not a channel, but we are a source. And this is our duty. This is our issue, and we don't see this. And if we don't see this, there is no escape. But for those who see it through the law is opening our minds and sees that we are not, and we must get rid of this. How can we get rid of this? And this is the miracle of salvation. Jesus, the eternal Son of God. And I will never enter to speak about his divinity because it's outside of my understanding and it's outside of the law with which I have to prove all things. So I never will go into the discussion of God, of how many person he is or not, or how it was in eternity, because I get lost, because it's outside of a measurement that I can use, because they are outside the law. God is outside the law. But what is inside the law is the humanity of Christ. And this we must understand, because it works according to the law. Every creature is inside the law. The term under the law in the Bible is when you cannot keep it, and inside the law is that you fulfill it. And God is above the law because he is not dependent on anything, because he's not a creature. Only a creature is dependent on something, on means, because it's a channel. God is a source, and we are channels. So the humanity of Christ has no doubts, has no things that we have to think about or be unsure, because the law describes it. And as a human, Jesus must have a father and a mother. And we know his father is God and his mother is Mary. And we know that as a man, he had to have half of the spirit of the father and half of the spirit of the mother. And from his father inherited the right identity, I'm a son of God, because that's written in the spirit. And from his mother, he inherited the false identity, the lie, I am a God. And now you imagine, he was God in the back. And now as a human, he was tempted to think he's a God. But he had also the right understanding who he was. As a human, he also had a body, and his body was half from his father and half from his mother. This is most important to understand. The humanity of Christ is only explainable by laws. But if you take away the law and put your mind above it because you're a God, then of course you will fight over the humanity of Christ. Our church has made great battles between this, because those who fight against the truth have never understood the law, because they're lawless. They go by texts. They go by things. They don't know that the text also must be interpreted according to the law. So I don't even need texts where you have a law. You can explain things because the law is unchangeable. If anything of the law would be changeable, then the truth would be changeable, and then it would be a lie. because only the lie is changeable. The truth is never changeable. So that's why Jesus was the Son of God and the Son of Man in his humanity. The only reason he had to come on the cross was to destroy in himself this nature. The whole wrath of God came against Christ on the cross, against this nature. And when he shouted, "It is finished," it was cut out of his spirit. And he died to raise up a new creature. He is the second Adam, a complete new creature. And something that is complete new on this creature is this union between the human and the divine. We know that the human cannot become divine and the divine not human. But now there has happened a unity that goes beyond our understanding. But this is the new man after the Spirit. It's a union for eternity, no separation possible. You see that God gave his Son in John 3:16 is this unity that is eternal. It is not that God gave his Son on the cross. Yes, that also includes that. But what came out of the grave is that sacrifice what God did for humanity. He united humanity for all time with his divinity in his Son. This is where the Son left all behind. He did not take it something to be kept, to be divine, but he united himself for all eternity to humanity. No one will understand that through all eternity, but it will be food for thoughts for our spirit. What God has done, he gave his Son to redeem me, to make me his son, and to unite me to his Son for all eternity by nature. This is the great gift of God. This is what we need to understand if we want to understand the love of God. This is giving his Son. You see, when Abraham was willing to give his son to die, that was nothing. That God gave his Son to die on the cross, that is not the real thing. Yes, it's included there. It's a sacrifice. But not that's the sacrifice. It's the eternal sacrifice that the Son remains a human, connected and put his divinity aside to be for all eternity one with us. This is the real sacrifice. That's why none of us will ever be able to sin, because when Jesus comes, we who are going to live by God's grace are going to be transformed if we are in the faith. And the others that are resurrected, the living saved, will all have this image. Partakers for eternity of the divine nature of the Son of God. No one will ever finish to appreciate what God has done for this world. And all the other worlds will wonder and say, how could you do that? For this depraved humanity, to unite it with yourself for all eternity and raise them up to be one with you. That will finish the great controversy forever, that God searches anything for himself. That will finish the great controversy that God is unrighteous, is not righteous. That will close all mouth of everyone that will ever want to think that God is not love, who renounced to his Son's divinity that it should be clothed with humanity in an indissoluble union. I could speak more of this, but let us continue. I need this new life of God in my heart. That's why by faith I become a son of God. And then what happens with my parents? They are not anymore my source. They're not anymore my identity. You see, in the lie, as you believe you're a God, you at the same time believe the deception that your parents are your identity, that you come from them, not through them. That's why when you become a son of God, your parents are not your identity anymore, but God is your identity. And so begins a battle in your heart between these two. And as this battle advances, friends, I see this in my life. I don't think how it will ever end. You know what brings me comfort? The idea that my selfish nature is in its last efforts to survive. You see, when something wants to survive, you see the last effort. I see my selfish nature as I never saw it before. And it disturbs me. It comes out of me. I see the lie. I see the prisonership. And I would be discouraged. But having that imagination, having that thought, which I believe is the truth, it's in its last efforts to not be killed totally. So let's move on by faith. Because I believe in the victory of faith. That I will be one day complete in my heart, a son of God. A son of my Father. And then I will represent Him. Then the model of Jesus will be my model. I will have His winning attitude and I will have a winning message to the world. Who did no sin. Yes, friends. I sinned. And you sinned. But there comes a time, and we must come to the point, where it is said about us, we do not sin anymore. You see, Jesus asked these people in verse 46, which of you convinces me of sin? And if I say the truth, why do you not believe me? It was no way. And then neither was guile found in his mouth. Now in our mouth was guile found because of our nature. But when it is over, it's killed, we will have no guile in our mouth. And we will say the truth. Even though it hurts, we will say it. But it will be no guile in it. Friends, this saying of the truth will bring us the persecution. Like it brought it to Christ. What did they do with Him in the temple? You read at the end of chapter 8, it says, verse 59, then took they up stones to cast at Him, but Jesus hid Himself and went out of the temple, going through the midst of them, and so passed by. Jesus was in the temple to be killed by His own people. Jesus was in the synagogue of Nazareth to be killed by His own people. Will it happen to us the same? What did He say wrong? He just told them that they are idolaters. He just told them that they are lost. He told them that they need a Savior. When you tell that today a Christian, he will kill you. If you tell today a Christian that his disease comes from his own sin, he will make you what? Who when he was reviled not again. We will be reviled? Yes. Will they go against us? Yes. It won't be the world yet. It's our church who excludes us from the Lord's Supper, who excludes us from, if we don't wear a mask, they don't give it to us anymore, because they don't have pastors that do it either way. You must do it just the way they say it. You're excluded from preaching because you might bring confusion into the poor herd, of the sheep. But friends, Jesus told it, their house will be let to them desolate. Then we'll see whom they can shepherd anymore. Who when he was revived not again. When he suffered, he threatened not. Yes, in me I would have this inclination to threaten my sinful nature. But Jesus, he suffered it. And I will also suffer it. Even though it's crying to heaven, the darkness that is there, we will not suffer, we will not threaten, but commit himself to him that judges righteously. A winning attitude and message are not separable. We must have the nature of Christ and the message of Christ. Will God's name, his character be seen by all inhabitants of the earth? We have seen through all this series, Romans 2, 17 to 24, for the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles through you. Will this ever have an end? Yes. It will become history in our days. Because God will have a remnant of all these hypocrites, Christians. He will have a remnant that will come out. And this remnant will keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. And the dragon is wroth with them and make war. Yes. He hates when people are not under his dominion anymore. He hates because you cannot keep the commandments of God except you be holy. If you do not keep the commandments of God, then you're a sinner. But which keep the commandments of God means they are sinless. That's why the devil hates them. Because he has no control over them. He cannot tempt them. They don't believe his lies anymore. And they have in front of the world a testimony that will be so light, like the light of Jesus. And he won't need millions. He went with 300 and Gideon against 120,000 of soldiers. Imagine 120,000 and 300 people. And that will happen the same. God needs not many. 144,000 is enough to bring to the world the light. And every human being will be put to his last decision. On which side will you be? The separation time has started. The judgment over the living has started. We don't know when our own name is called on, but we know it will be now. It's today. There will be a visible separation. Not only the mask will separate us, there will be other visible signs that separate the believers of a lie with the believers of the truth. The believers of the lie will all bear the mark of the beast. And the believers of the truth will bear no mark. You see, so the comparison is very clear. The evil one will have a mark. They will show something external. That's why I say the mask is not the mark of the beast, but the mask is a sign of the mark of the beast. It's just a taste of what will come. And if you surrender now, you will surrender then as well. Because where will you separate to stop believing a lie and walking after the truth? This is the most serious matter. Because God has started, He raised up to finish his work. And he will finish it. And everyone will have an open sign on whose side he is. On which side will you be? I want to be on the side of the free ones, on the side of those who believe the truth, who have the law at its standard, who have the life of Christ in their hearts, and they live by faith in that new life that he made for us. And I want to be a messenger that brings the truth to the world. Will it bring me also hate? Yes. But as Christ said, follow me. I will follow him as well. Will you? Amen.